Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how to annotate text, book, poem, or whatever you've got. This video is featuring me, Mr. Crair.
And me, Mr. Church.
There we go. We'll figure it out. All right. First off, I don't know. Annotation doesn't really come up too often, but let's just make sure we understand what it means to annotate. So you can see kind of within there notation, and then if we kind of shorten it a little bit more, you'll know the word note. And that kind of sums it up right there, that what we're doing is we're making notes here for the text. And we're going to see if this marker works, so bear with us. We've never actually used one before. And so a nice little simple definition would be to add notes to a text, giving an explanation or a comment. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to be reading something, and then when you finish, you're going to add your own commentary or explanation to it. Okay? So so here's kind of an example of what annotation might look like. You'll notice that sometimes you can use a lot of different colors, so hopefully your notes are easy to read. Because sometimes if you use the same color, it gets a little clustered. And at first it looks intimidating because there's a lot of stuff here. But once you know kind of the basics of it, it's not so bad, right? Okay, so I think Mr. Church actually suggested this one too, and I thought it was kind of good. It will slow down your reading, but ultimately save you time. Mr. Church, how will this save you time?
Well, instead of just trying to get through the storyline and find the major plot points, you actually have to stop and think about what's happening in the story and important elements like the plot, the setting, the conflict, and how all those elements are working together. So it will slow down your reading because you're taking time to think about what you're reading. But it will save you time because instead of just breezing through the text and the teacher asking you kind of an in-depth question, you don't have to fly back through the book and look for, and go, okay, what happened? What happened? Where was that? You will actually have the annotations completed already, and that'll save you time because it's easier just to go flip through your book and find those annotations for the important information.
Yeah. And then also kind of going along with that, it provides an immediate self-check for understanding. So I think we've all kind of had that moment where you've read a page of something, and you make it to the bottom of the page, and then you kind of freak out, and you're like, I have no idea what I just read. My eyes glazed over all the words, but I didn't actually read them. And so when you annotate, it forces you to engage with the text and make sure that you do understand something. And if you don't, you can kind of question the text by putting question marks next to the side that you can ask later on during class. So by writing these question marks or just kind of your commentary with the book, you're having a conversation with the text as you go along. And then finally, I think Mr. Church said this too, that idea of, like when you show up in class, if you have your book or poem or whatever annotated, it's much easier to review that later on after you've read it, and then it's easier to analyze something when you actually have some notes already on there, kind of a nice little jumping ground.
Yeah, so the kind of questions for immediate self-check or understanding, even if it's just a word that you haven't come across, it could be a vocabulary word, it could be something you just can't figure out in that context, or it could be a bigger question that relates to something that happened earlier in the book that plot-wise just you don't understand what's going on or why this certain character is important. So it's very important to ask those questions at the time instead of trying to go back and think about, okay, what did I miss? Where was that? And have to almost reread everything that you just read. So.
And we want to do the least amount of work efficiently. That's not being lazy, that's just being smart. Okay? You might want to write this down if you're taking notes to go along with this. Things that you might want to annotate. There are tons of guides out there. If you just Google annotation guides or ways to annotate, you'll find tons of stuff. Hopefully, if you're coming here from Parkway North or wherever, your teacher might have already handed out kind of a guideline because there's multiple systems and everyone kind of uses their own system. But I think this is kind of the basics of what you usually want to annotate. So words or sections or just like passages you don't understand, this is really helpful, especially in poetry, where if there's an ambiguous line, you can kind of underline it or put a question mark next to it so you can come back to it later in class. Important characters or quotes and scenes, like when you feel like the author is really trying to tell you something in that passage. Usually if you see any of these literary devices, irony, tone, setting, symbols, metaphors, And, that's not even an exhaustive list. You might want to put a star next to that, especially a really good metaphor. And a really irony, too, because usually that's the author trying to tell us something about the message they want to get across.
So an example of that is like in To Kill a Mockingbird, the first couple chapters are talking about the history of the town and the history of the Finch clan. And they talk about, I guess it's Scout's like great-grandfather, some of my uncles, and these people who have died.
Yeah.
And you have to determine whether those people, are they important, or is it just kind of some exposition, some mentioning of some background? Are these characters going to come back up? Have they been mentioned 3 or 4 times? Like Boo Radley's constantly mentioned early in the book, so he's going to come back around. So that's a character you may want to note. But you kind of start determining who's important and who's not. And then if somebody has a very significant idea, hence go back to Kill a Mockingbird, they talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, the book is called that, you might want to say, oh, they're talking about a mockingbird here. I need to note that. That's important. That's going to come up. So,
yeah, definitely. That idea of repetition, where if the symbol in the title comes up in the book, probably that's going to be important. The third one's kind of related to the first one as well. Just writing questions when you're confused. Instead of just writing a big question mark, you can also write down why you're confused. I like this one too, this note sections you respond to emotionally. If the passage makes you angry, like you don't like the ending, or you feel sad when something happens to a character, note those sections and bring those up during conversations, because the author wants you to respond emotionally, besides just being bored. Okay? And then finally...
yeah, don't mark the board.
Yeah, don't mark the board. Don't mark it. Yeah, your whole book might be marked up if you're really cynical. And then finally, you've heard this one before. Any connections you can make to yourself, world, or other text. I think they kind of go from least important to most important. Self, yeah, okay, whatever. World, okay. Text are pretty good. Just make sure it's not Hunger Games like every time you make a connection. All right, so what we're going to do next is let's actually practice with a short story. So we've got a little bit of flash fiction here over the story called Wallet by Alan Woodman. What you should probably do at this point is, this is the whole story right here. So I suggest, I don't think you can see the bottom part of it. Okay, give us some time. We might have to come back to this. Wait, is there like 2 slides? No.
Yeah, like the full screen.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So that's the whole
There
story.
we go.
That's the whole story.
Okay, so look at this part, pause the video, read the story, and then we're going to come back and try and annotate this story. All right?